Hey guys, Logan here from Popular Woodworking Magazine. So a couple of issues back, we featured an article that I did here in the shop on doing inlays with the shaper origin. So I figured we would show some of that off in a video so you can see exactly how we do that. But I'm not going to do the inlay part necessarily. What we're going to do is something that was a little extra on that article, and that was doing brass with the shaper origin. So just because we use origin for woodworking a lot of times doesn't mean it can't cut other materials. So I'm going to show you how we make those brass medallions using the shaper origin to accent some of our work. So what I have here, besides a cat, is some of the initial inlay pieces that I cut. And these were thin veneer, and those work really, really nicely. They did get a little fuzzy just depending on the veneer you have. And I actually bailed on these guys for the article. Instead, I went to some shop sawn veneer. And this is a little bit thicker, maybe 1/8 of an inch thick. And you can see where I cut a lot of my pieces out. So cutting this brass is pretty much the same process as cutting either the thin veneer or the shop sawn veneer, but the steps are a little bit different just because of what we are doing. So I have here one of my sample boards that I was working on when we first started doing this article. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to engrave one of the cardinal directions on the brass. And that is going to make the letter, whether that's the N, the E, the W, or the S for northeast, south, and west, and then we will cut it out. Because we can use the tape or workstation here to position that letter first, we'll engrave it, and then we'll cut the circle around. So with engraving first, I've set up the router with this little V-groove bit. And this is going to do the engraving. And what I like about doing it this way is that, especially in brass, it kind of gives that hand engraved look. It kind of makes that letter sparkly and jump out at you. So I'm going to go ahead and equip this into Origin. And then I'm actually going to move Workstation around to the end of the bench so we can get a camera over my shoulder so you can see on the screen exactly what I'm doing. Now I'm going to cut this brass using Workstation as I mentioned. Workstation supplies the domino here, and now my workpiece, which is going to be this piece of brass, is going to be mounted to this platen here. And to hold it down, clamps would probably get in the way. If this was wider, I could actually pinch it between this bar and the face of Workstation. But with it being narrower, I'm just going to use double-sided tape, and I'll put a couple of strips here. There's not a ton of force on this as we're cutting it, so a couple of strips will do it. The weight of Origin's base will help hold it down as well. And just peel that. And place it. There we go. Okay, now it's not going anywhere. The biggest thing is just to make sure that the base of Origin slides over top and this doesn't get caught on anything. Now we can come up with our design. And to do that, I'm actually going to step to the computer and use the Shaper Studio to make the design and just send it right over here to Origin. So in Studio, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make my design. And this is pretty simple to do. We're just going to make an N. We'll change the font to something that looks kind of fun and nautical. I don't remember which one I used for the last one, but you know what? That one looks fun and nautical. And we'll size it to whatever size we want. I know that I'm going to have an 1¼ inch diameter circle, so that size looks good. And now we're just going to make a simple shape to go around. We'll actually just type it in 1¼ inch. And then center up. So now we have this N in the center of a circle. We can go to plan and see how these cuts are. The N is going to be an online cut because that is going to be engraved. So you can kind of see there how that is going to work. This is a V-bit. So there is the track for a V-bit following the N. The circle is going to be an outside cut because we're cutting around the outside to give us that 1.25" diameter medallion. That is set there. And then we will just save this as nautical N. And that is saved. There we go. So now we can step back over to origin. So we're going to import, and there's our nautical N that we just had. And now I'm going to position it just in the middle somewhere. I'm not being super precise about this. Let's make sure we're not going to cut off the edge of the brass and into workstation. And there it's placed. So now at this point, I have the V-bit installed. We are ready to make sure our settings are all correct. This is an engrave bit. We will do an automatic Z-touch. So it is going to lower that bit down, touch the tip to find where that work surface is, just like that. And now I can tell it how deep I want it to engrave. With an engraving like this, we'll start it at a 1/16 of an inch deep. And now we are ready to route this. We're going to start by engraving that N first. And the biggest thing when doing brass is it's going to be loud, so you're going to want to make sure you have hearing protection on. Safety glasses are a must. And anytime that you are routing metal or working with metal, in fact, you want to make sure not to brush the chips away with your hand because those little slivers are very sharp, and trust me, they will find your way into your skin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to follow the lines on the screen of origin, and that is going to automatically correct for any little bit of movement that I'm going to make off of the line and keep us on track. And then when we're done, we'll go ahead and pull origin out of the way and see what the end looks like. If we need to, we can come back and cut a little bit deeper. Origin's that accurate that it will allow me to route right back over the top of it. But we'll see how this 1/16 of an inch deep cut looks and decide if we need to change it after the fact. All right, so the routing looks really good. To be honest with you, the shape of the N on here isn't the right thing for this V engraving because it kind of wallered out the center of it, but it still looks like a nice engraved N, so we'll use it just for this demonstration. So now we have to cut the outer circle. And when I move origin back in place, you can see that there's a circle around it. All we have to do now is switch out the bit to the right bit for cutting through this brass. And that is going to be an 1/8 inch O-flute bit, and we will route around that. But we'll do that with a special setup in here called auto pass that's going to lower the bit every pass to make multiple passes so we're not routing through this 1/8 inch thick brass all at once. So let me go ahead and change out this bit and I'll show you how auto pass works. Okay, now that I have that 1/8 inch bit installed, once again, because I've changed the bit, I need to do another Z-touch. We'll let it automatically do the Z-touch so it finds where the tip of that bit is. There it is. Now we are going to cut to a depth. This is 1/8 inch thick brass. I'm going to go a hair deeper than 1/8 inch. So we're going to go 0.13 deep. And we are going to do what is called auto pass. So auto pass in origin, you can tell it how many passes you want to do. Right now I have it set to do 3 passes at 0.063 depth per pass. So every time I make a complete circle around the outside of that circle, it will lower itself down a little bit further. And you can actually set offsets here so it kind of does a finish pass on that final cut. I'm not going to mess around with that right now. This will work just fine like this, doing 3 passes. So we're going to go to that circle. We are on outside cut per the dotted line going around the outside of my shape. So now I'm going to start this, and after every pass, origin's going to lower that bit just a little bit more until I punch all the way through, and we will have a nice little medallion. Okay. So with kind of raw stock brass like this, you might get a little variance in thickness. So I got a little tag here that will pop right off. Just be careful not to cut myself on that. And then what I like to do with these little brass medallions is just take some sandpaper and clean that surface off real quick. And if you go in the same direction, you can get a really nice brush look, and even clean it up with a little bit of steel wool or Scotch-Brite. Really gives you a nice look. So as you can see, using origin on something like brass is a really cool way to make accents for inlays, or even something like a Maker's Mark medallion for you to put in your other furniture projects.